Welcome back to another edition of the Heart to Heart podcast. And my guest today is David Hawkins. So David's been one of my friends for over 10 years or so. He's also ex-military. So Dave, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So that was a pretty quick intro. Is there anything that you wanted to kind of share before we get started?
No, I'm ready to dive in it with you, brother.
Okay, sounds good. So I guess we'll kind of start with the military. So how long were you in the military for?
So I was a combat engineer. I was in the reserve force for a total of 9 years. Did a tour in 08 to 09. I joined in 2005. So yeah.
Okay. And when you do like tours, like what is that like day in and day out, like when you're on a tour?
It really depends what your role is, right? My role initially, well, I got there with a different section when I first left, because my section came in later on, and I was with the recce's. And then when my section came, then we were QRF, which is a quick reaction force, and it's just like I don't know. It's like, I guess you could say it's like SWAT here, where they're on 15-minute standby at all times. And then if you get a call, then you go outside the wire and you just do whatever is required of you at that point in time. And then I also did, we just would swap out sometimes while we're out there. And again, like everyone's tour is different. It depends what your task is. So, I mean, infantry, they have different tasks. They'll also be attached to us and we'll be attached to them, stuff like that. So it really depends what you're doing.
You just saying like, part of the reason I wanted to chat on this podcast with you is because I know that a lot of veterans are using cannabis, and then one of the things you kind of just mentioned a minute ago was, being on alert every like 15 minutes. So I imagine that's, why, some guys girls come back very like hyper vigilant, like being kind of like always, on alert. Would you say that's kind of part of the reason why some people do end up having a little bit of hypervigilance when they come back? Or
yeah, honestly, it really depends on what role you played overseas. Like there's some dudes that are constantly out in the field and constantly getting in ticks. Fortunately, I wasn't in that type of scenario where we're constantly getting ticks and stuff like that. One major thing to note with that is like one person can have I would say every person has a completely different experience on their tour, to be quite honest. Like you go 1 year and then the next year someone else, the same person will go again and they'll have a completely different experience than their first year that they went. So they vary person to person quite a bit. And that's the thing, right? Because I mean, I know when guys first went there, I think they were in ticks quite often. And, that's just constant vigilance, I would say. And then some people get rocket attacks every day. Some people don't. Like, I think we had a rocket attack every day which is like, it sounds crazy, but it's really not. Like after a while, like your first one, it's like, oh shit, that was a rocket. It's like, okay. And then after a while, it just becomes normal, I guess.
just become desensitized to it a little bit.
Well, yeah, it's just like a boom, it's just,
yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, so there's another rocket attack, and we don't normally get followed up by multiple. I mean, sometimes we'll get like 2 a day, and then some days we won't have a rocket attack for like a week or two, and then sometimes it'll be every day, twice a day, or whatever. It's just people setting up rockets in a field, running away, and then having like a timer set on it, basically. So the rocket just shoots into the camp. They just kind of like set it up and eyeball it. So
yeah, it seems like that's something that would definitely, cause a lot of like hypervigilance if you're, always kind of out sort of like, looking for an attack or expecting to be, attacked at some point. So I imagine that's, definitely part of the reason why some people, when they come back from the military, they're, looking into like windows or looking out their window, and sort of there's a bit of like, distrust that's kind of hard to kind of gain back when you come back to regular civilizations, so to speak. So I imagine that a lot of it kind of stems from just always sort of like being on edge and being in an environment like that.
Yeah, I think so. It's also kind of weird too, because it can go opposite. So like you can desensitize yourself there to like the booms and the loud noises, and then you come here and you become hypersensitive to it. So
Yeah.
I don't know the science behind it, but I have seen that, and I have, that's definitely a thing as
Yeah.
well. It really depends on the individual, I would say.
And I find that too, like a lot of, I mean, this is well known that a lot of vets when they come back, they struggle with, nightmares a lot. And I was kind of wondering, like, what about when you're actually over there, like overseas? Like, were a lot of guys experiencing nightmares when they were overseas, or is it something that sort of develops after when you return?
I mean, I will say I experienced nightmares while I was overseas, but that was, I think, due to the methylquin that I was taking, which is an anti-malaria drug, and it really makes your dreams extremely vivid and realistic.
Okay.
And so, quite a few nights I just wake up soaking wet, just with sweat. And I was just like, it's just wild, some of the stuff that you
Yeah.
experience on those drugs.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like then, like, and I've never really chatted, too much, like, unless at least not at this length, with a lot of veterans before. But like, when you do come back over, like, did you kind of then like expect to sort of have some of the symptoms that you were developed? Like, were you kind of thinking like, oh, when I come back, like everything will just go back normal? I kind of like forget about what happened over there, or did you kind of expect to? I know I'm gonna be in sort of like a rude adjustment kind of when I get back.
So, like, I would say when I was over there, I was probably having quite a bit of a tough time, and part of my own fault there. But I saw coming home as like a finish line, like everything will be back to normal, just like before we left and shit like that. Um, and then the rude awakening was coming back and realizing like nothing's changed, emotionally or physically, stuff like that. And then it's like, well, shit, now what do I do? You know, it's like
Yeah,
nothing's changed. This was kind of like my end goal. That's all. That was the goal, is just to get home, right? And once you get home, it's like, fuck, now what?
yeah. You can't unseen some of the things that you've seen, kind of thing.
Yeah, more so just like, yeah, emotional based.
Yeah. And do you find that when you came back to, like, in addition to the like a lot of guys struggle with hypervigilance and insomnia, like, was there anything else that you felt was something that was difficult to like adjust to, or those sort of like the main things, like sleeping and sort of just being really hypervigilant? And I don't even know if we said the definition of hypervigilant yet. So for people who are listening, like, that's basically just being like always on edge, always kind of being on the lookout, and not being able to relax. So a lot of veterans that I've seen, and some of them I have gone out to dinner with and stuff before, like, they need to sit with their back against the back of the restaurant so they can see the entire restaurant, because that's how hypervigilant they are now. They don't trust anyone who's behind them, because they don't know what may kind of happen. Is there so anyways, is there anything that you felt that not necessarily personally, but other maybe friends that struggled with, besides say nightmares and hypervigilance when they came back?
Yeah, definitely. We have a network of guys that we chat with, and there's definitely, it's a lot of it's still just training as well that's ingrained. And I mean, some guys are close protection officers, and they find the corner of the room and they sit in the corner of the room because they have to keep an eye on things, right? No matter what. So um, to have a visual advantage point is obviously key in kind of any scenario. So a lot of
Yeah.
guys still keep that going. Sure, you don't really need to, but
Yeah.
it
It's
helps
not even
sometimes.
necessarily like a bad thing. Like, I
No.
kind of like, it makes sense. Like, hey, like, I mean, things do happen in restaurants sometimes, and maybe it is good to maybe sit in the corner, to sit at least in an area of the restaurant where you're where you can see things. Like, I understand
Hmm.
how that would be sort of a smart thing to do. But
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other times where you're in, maybe you're just at home. Like, I've heard of guys before telling me, like, they're at home, and they're just sort of like looking out their window, and in that
Mm.
situation, like, maybe the hypervigilance has kind of taken over too much, to the point where, like, there's almost like no advantage of doing that. Like, in a restaurant, like, you can easily make an argument that, hey, someone could come in and open up with a gun. Obviously it's like very, very unlikely, but it's
Mm.
possible, so you could make some type of argument that, like, that is sort of the right thing to kind of still do. But when you're at home by yourself, it almost seems like there's no advantage in doing that.
Yeah, at home I don't see too much advantage unless just like bird watching. Or people watching, I guess. I mean, I do enjoy people watching. So I mean, um, I think even senses like that, like going to a restaurant, people like to have the nice seat where they can see more of the area anyways, right? So there
Yeah.
is there is that as well. But yeah, I would say a lot of guys when they come back, for me at least, I would like to look for more stimulation, right? So
Yeah.
do things that stimulates your body a bit more, your mind. So
So, all being said, I definitely wanted to chat with you about cannabis, like I say, because I think that there's a lot of use with it that's been really, really effective for a lot of soldiers, but there's also probably been a lot of, abuse sometimes with cannabis as well. And, this is coming from a physician who's, I've prescribed cannabis to maybe close to 1,000 veterans or so, over the past 5 to 6 years, and I have a book on Amazon on it as well. But do you find that when you use the cannabis that you used it, like sorry, I should rephrase this. So how did you use cannabis effectively? And was there ever a point where you found that you weren't using it effectively and it was actually being detrimental to your overall health?
so yeah, like I used cannabis quite a lot when I came back. I hadn't really smoked it at all until like I'd done it like maybe like a handful of times before. And then when I came back, um, I was using it quite often, and I was just like to get to sleep. And so I just have a good time, I guess. But I was using it every night, every day. Just going to when Metro was 24 hours in my hometown, we going to Metro at like, I don't know, like 3 a.m., just getting like food, going back and just watching YouTube, waiting until pass out, basically. And
Yeah.
I would do that probably every night for quite a while. And then, that's just to get over. I think guys use it, especially for me personally, would use it just to, and I think it's a great tool to use it to get over certain things and to help you get through certain things in life. But the problem is, I see us continuing to use it and not working on what we need to. Like once you get past a certain stage, I think you should either cut down or stop using it and then start working on what you couldn't work on because you're in the heat of the moment at those times where you really couldn't deal with anything. You really couldn't work on yourself or work on
Yeah.
mental aspects in your life. And I think after you get to a certain point, I think you should really cut back and actually start trying to implement ways in dealing with things and working on them.
Yeah, I feel that the same way. I think it's an incredible tool. Like initially, when soldiers come back over, especially when they're struggling with hypervigilance and with sleep at night. Sleep is, really, really difficult to fix sometimes, and a lot of times, unfortunately, the medications that we have, like trazodone and zopiclone, are probably two of the bigger ones. Don't necessarily give people the best quality of sleep. I mean, they help for some people, and if they help you and it's effective for you, then fantastic. But it just doesn't work for a lot of people. But using cannabis and getting rid of those nightmares, I think is critical for people initially, because once you fix sleep, it really is kind of the catapult to fixing a lot of other things as well. Because if you're not sleeping well, it's really hard to, like you were saying, like working on yourself and things like that. I mean, if you're not able to sleep, it's going to be really difficult to work on yourself. But going back to your point, I definitely agree that initially it can be a good tool, but if you're not doing the things that you need to do to work on yourself, then it can be used more of like a crutch than say a tool. And I think that there's a lot of soldiers that have used it as a tool, but some unfortunately have been using it, I think, a little bit as a crutch as well. And So I'm happy that you said that today, because what you want to do is, if you're, like you said, like sometimes you're just not in a state where you can work on yourself. And I totally
Hmm.
understand that. Like, it's just, you're completely burnt out, like your brain's fried, like you just did all these tours overseas, and no one here is able to really relate to you other than the people that, you went on tour with. And in those instances, you can't just like be positive and like change your thinking and change your mindset. Like, it's just not possible to do. But if you use cannabis, and then it does give you some relief, in those moments of relief, and in those moments where you're not feeling symptomatic, then that's when you should start to work on yourself. Like, I get it when you're at a point where, you just can't work on yourself because things are so difficult. But if you use some medicine, and it's getting you to a point where you're experiencing some relief where you can go work on yourself, then you need to start doing that, and I think that that's sometimes the thing that some veterans struggle with, is sort of that transition, because they find this medicine, and they're like, oh my god, finally I have some relief, and I feel better. But then sometimes they don't take that next step to do the right things to sort of improve themselves every day.
Hmm. No, I 100% agree. And, the sleep is like, there's those three pillars, right? You got sleep, um, how well you're eating, and exercise, right? And those are the foundations of, having a healthy mind and body. And so, like, one of the problems, like you were talking about, um, sleeping pills, I don't know what the name of it is, but while I was over there, see, one of the problems I was having too is, uh, I couldn't sleep at first, and I would just stay up until I would pass out because of the nightmares or whatever. And they would give me these sleeping pills that made water taste like metallic-y, made water
Yeah,
taste like shit.
that's Zopiclone, or also called Imivane. That's
Yeah,
the classic side effect from those. Yeah,
yeah. So I had those while I was overseas and when I was back here, and it was just like, I don't know. I hate those things.
yeah. Like, how did you feel on them? Just so like some people can understand. Like, you just felt groggy in the morning, or
Oh yeah, I didn't feel good in the morning,
yeah,
and again, you couldn't drink anything. It just tasted gross. So it was like
yeah.
you're dehydrated on top of it because it's like I don't want to drink water.
I took one time, and I remember the next day I felt like shit. And I remember going to get a drink of water, and the water tasted like metal. Like, it was fucking
Yeah.
brutal. And so I completely understand why no one would ever want to, use that medicine. So I basically try to avoid using it unless someone tells me that, this is what they use and it works effectively for them, and they've used it before
Mm.
and they want me to prescribe it. It's like, okay, if it works for you, then great. But I really try to avoid initiate that medication, just for that one reason.
Yeah, they hand those things out like Pez candy. Like it's disgusting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you say disgusting, it literally tastes disgusting too.
Yeah, it's gross. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so what sort of are some of the like non-pharmaceutical or non-medication tools that you feel that have helped you in terms of, transitioning back from military life to civilian life?
I mean, non-medication wise, uh, there's actually pretty good studies that a minimum of 12 minutes in meditation are just like, I don't know. When I first came back, I was told I should, do meditation and stuff like that the by the military doctors and shit like that. And I was like, the fuck is sitting with my own thoughts gonna do for me? I already think all the time, right? But then but then you sit there for a bit, like years later now I do this practice, and I've actually seen quite a few studies. There's actually been a really recent really good podcast lately on Rogan's podcast about this woman. She did studies on soldiers actually, and minimum, the number is like minimum 12 minutes a day, and you do that every day for 4 weeks, and you'll have great reduction in stress and abundance of other things. And she did a study where guys, their control group went overseas, and the ones that did 12 minutes a day, they came back, they had way less problems.
Really?
So Yeah.
Just 12 minutes a day. Hey, was that I think I was listening to that for it was with a lady, she's an Indian lady, is that right?
Yes. Yes,
I
that's it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I listened, I got like 15 or 20 minutes into it, and then I couldn't listen to it. Not because I didn't like it. I just had to go. I was doing something else, but I do want to go back and listen to it. But just to get to a little bit more like specific about that. So I'm a big fan of Headspace. That's one I've been using lately.
Hmm.
And sometimes I find that even like if I stop doing it for a little bit and I start doing it again, even on the first day, sometimes I feel like a little bit better. Like I feel a little bit calmer. So I was
Hmm.
just wondering, like, what app do you use, or do you just kind of do it solo, or?
So I used quite a few. The one I used was Muse. You put like an actual headband
Oh,
on,
okay.
and then it's like it's got a pretty cool one where it's like
Muse
it's got
one,
like a
Muse two, there's Muse S, there's a bunch of them, right? So
yeah, I don't even know what I
yeah.
have. I have the original Muse, or no, the
Okay.
Muse 2 is what I have.
Okay.
Um, and then there's a cool one where it's like a bell or whatever goes off, and it's like if your mind's starting to race a bit more, the bell goes off more. It kind of
Oh, really?
lets you know, yeah,
Okay.
how well you're doing. But I like just sitting there and just chilling,
Okay.
just listening to yourself and what you're doing, what just focus on what your mind's thinking of, and you just realize like there's no way you can just quiet the mind. It's so hard.
Yeah.
And so you just let it do its thing, and you just see where it goes sometimes, and you try to bring it back to just breathing. And then there's like Basmati meditation, which I did this crazy one from Yogi Labs out in Bali there, and it's a free online thing. I think they run it once a month. It's great. So if you have the time, you really need to book off like I think like 2 weeks of time to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's insane. So I never felt that amount of pain before, and how hard it is just to sit there. So it's like I think it's 10 hours a day
Holy
of
shit.
just meditation, and you I never thought sitting down would be so difficult and so painful. Like the body just starts aching everywhere. And then they tell you just to start focusing on like a small area, like a triangle between like your nose and the sides of your mouth. And you just focus on the area and try to keep as focused as possible on those areas. And you can only eat rice and sesame seed oil for the entire time. Twice a day you get to eat. And you
Why
just
is that? Why don't they give you
I
like
don't know.
food?
Just to clear out the system, I guess. But so yeah, it's meditation for like 10 hours a day. You get like 30-minute breaks sometimes between the times, and it's different types of meditation while you're doing it. And you realize like because I've had like 4 back surgeries now, you realize that I used to feel like my entire lower back was just like completely messed up and just super painful. And you get so focused after you do this for so long where you realize the pain's only like a pinpoint. You can like bring it down from like an area to like a fist to like a finger to like a pinpoint, and you can pinpoint that exact area. And that's how like what happens after what I felt after that entire time is just like pain is just like this tiny little pinpoint, and it actually goes with like the pulse of your body, just like the nervous system, just like, and then you just feel the pain, but it's this tiny pinpoint. It's
It's
insane.
insane. So you would only feel that like after, and you only got to like that pinpoint after you were meditating, like for how long, like how many hours roughly?
Uh, it really is how much you focus, but the beginning of the morning would always be rough, and then I'd sort of start getting into it, and then at night it starts to get tougher because your knees start to hurt and everything, and then you just start focusing on certain areas like where is the pain and how to shrink the pain and how to make it smaller. And the guy that teaches this, I think I forget what it was. He was in a pretty big accident. I think he broke his back or something like that,
Okay.
and he was able to just like wipe the pain away. Kind of, I wasn't able to wipe the pain away. Like I'm still, but he's able to focus. Like he's got that switch in his mind where he can just like like shoot it
It's,
away.
it's insane. Yeah, and even like it ties into cannabis even a little bit, because sometimes like people will tell me like when they use cannabis, it's like it's not that, you know, I can't feel the pain. It's just that the pain bothers me less because you're kind of dissociated from it, right? And
Right.
you get the same thing like when you're meditating, and so if you're focused on your breath and on your breathing, then like you're not focused on your pain, so like you tend to feel less pain through dissociation. And like that kind of sounds like hippie or woo woo to some people, but like it's straight up science, you know, like
Yeah.
once you feel like dissociated a bit, like you are going to feel less pain. And that's what,
Hmm.
you know, meditation does. And it's super cool though that like, because I've seen, I think one study anyway on Headspace, I think that was even only 10 minutes per day where they did it. So you really don't need to do like that much meditation in order to, you know, reap the benefits. Like you don't have to be a fucking monk and go away for like 30 years somewhere and learn all this
No.
shit.
Yeah.
Just, you know, download an app. Like the one I use is Headspace, and I know a lot of people are using Waking Up from Sam Harris. A lot of people like that one too. There's another one, Calm, that people use. So but you just like to do it like but by yourself. Like I'm like that sometimes. I just like to put in and some people may say this is cheating, but I'll just put like meditation music on, and I just find I can kind of just like zone out.
Yeah.
And sometimes in addition to the meditation, I'll do some journaling as well. So have you found that in addition to the meditation, you do a little bit of journaling, or have you found more like meditation's been your thing?
I don't know. It's weird. I tried the journaling thing, and then I like read some of my journals, and then I cringe. And I'm like, rip that one out, start over
Yeah,
again.
yeah,
So I'm like, nah. But you know, I might start journaling or something again.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I was gonna say the one that I did for a little bit, but I haven't done it in a while. But I did do it for a few years. Was the 5 minute journal,
yeah.
and you write down you know, three things that you're grateful for in the morning. I can't remember all of them, but like two things how you
Mm,
kind of made the day better, or something like that. But it's a decent practice. But I do find that I probably get more benefit just out of, you know, meditation as well. And
mm,
sometimes too, even just I mean, maybe it is a form of meditation, but just sort of like sitting like quietly with some, you know, headphones on in the morning, and just
mm-hmm,
kind of, you know, making sure that I'm sort of grounded, so to speak, before like I start my day. And you know, coming back to some of like the science on the meditation, like there was a while ago, I mean it's probably 4 or 5 years ago this was out, but there was a Harvard study that said that even just meditating for 2 months like changes your brain. Like I think it increased the white matter, the gray matter in your brain.
mm-hmm,
I have to check on that. So yeah, I mean it's something that I think some people think that, you know, first of all they just think that it doesn't work, period, and it definitely does. Like there's, you know, high
mm-hmm,
quality evidence on it. And then the other thing that, you know, I think a lot of people don't realize is you don't have to dedicate your life to it. Like 10, 12
mm-hmm.
minutes a day, you know, that can actually make quite a bit of difference. And that's really interesting though. You were talking about the study that that lady was talking about on Rogan, because with the soldiers who are just doing 12 minutes a day. I mean,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Well, that's like the minimum. You can do a lot more than that. And she was explaining like even like when she was studying this, she had to go about a different way of saying how what she was studying, because she was worried about pushback from her colleagues, right? Um,
Interesting.
and the way she explains it, it's like your cache, it's like your browser history. It's like the 12 minutes a day is just helping delete that, you know, that cache of thoughts that don't really matter, right? It's like reset yourself, you know, and that's what it basically does, just like wipes it clean. And going back to the other thing, like like cannabis is this disassociative, but the Vasmana that I did, it actually wants you to focus on the pain, not to avoid, but to go into it. And
Okay.
so I'd focus on the pain even more, and then that's when you realize, like, because you're so focused on that area of pain that the area decreases, and you realize it's actually a very small area of pain. It's not a large area.
It's interesting. It's almost like you're like you're voluntarily seeking the pain, and because of like you're doing that instead of trying to avoid it, you can sort of like conquer it in some ways. Is that sort of some of the reasoning behind it, or how does that really work when you're like trying to focus on the pain in order to dissipate it?
Um,
Or am I kind of
yeah,
just wrong on that?
no, no, no. Like you literally like, yeah, you're going into the pain. That's what he says. Like go into the pain, right? So you go into the pain. You just focus on the pain so hard that 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 area is no longer a massive area of pain. It's this tiny, minuscule pinpoint. And then if you focus on that pinpoint even harder, for him, I guess you can just like dissolve the area of pain, and there's no pain. You just kind of like accept it. You accept the pain, and then it kind of like releases in a way.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's definitely interesting because some people can do it, right? And that's why it was like 120 hours of meditation in that short amount of time, is because basically he's trying to cram like, again, like the 30 years of meditation practice that he did into like one small session, as crammed in as possible. I'm like, whatever, I got nothing to do right now, I'm going to try it. So
That's
and
insane.
yeah,
When did
and the
you
only
do
reason why, um last September.
that? Okay.
Yeah. And then it kind of put me down this whirlwind of like, what can I mentally get through? Because then after that, I did the fasting, right? For like, I've always done fasting, but only like eat once a day, right? Or, and stuff like that. But then I did that fasting where it's like, how long can I go without actually eating food? Like, how long could I sustain myself and still function without eating? And, quite a while actually. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's that voluntary discomfort. Like it's like once you like, voluntarily like put yourself in a position where you're going to be uncomfortable, and then you sort of conquer it, so to speak, then it's just so much easier to like take that mindset with you and use it, for something else. And like, I don't do, although I'm pretty close, I do a cold shower, I would say, like every single day. But like I just know that like when I do that, like I'm doing this voluntarily. Like I know I'm gonna get uncomfortable, and then because of that, like it makes things less uncomfortable that are going to be. And like just as an example, like yesterday, I did some MMA, but like right before that, I turned on my shower super cold because I was like, listen, like you're gonna be uncomfortable in that hour where you're doing a bunch of MMA and you have someone trying to hit your face. So like just like get used to it right now, and then prepare yourself in that mode. And I just
Mm.
find that like if you seek voluntary discomfort, then it's just going to be much much easier when something does come along like in your way, because you're going to have that mindset that like, well, if I did this and I was able to conquer that, then when this comes along, I'm going to be able to conquer this next obstacle.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like, even like growing up, like working out and doing training in the army, I'd be super uncomfortable with certain things, like fitness wise. But I'd just like, the body would be in so much pain, and I just want to quit. But I just tell the body, I just like basically tell my body myself, I'm like, just shut the fuck up. Like you're gonna go through this whether you like it or not. So might as well just put up with it.
Yeah.
It's like, tell the body like I'm not gonna quit. So you might as well just deal with it. And so that's what I did, like working out wise, and getting through certain obstacles fitness wise, and going through those pain thresholds. It's like, just tell the body to shut the fuck up and keep going. And but when it comes to the cold, it's completely different. So like I'm up north, doing stuff right now, and up near Halliburton, um, and the water's freezing, but I'll go for a workout, and then right after, I'll sit in that water, and at first the body just like kind of wants to move, and I'm just like forcing it just to stay still and just sit there and just take it, and you just take the cold. So, and you just get to that point where it's just like, I'm good now. And once you like just kind of give into being good with the
Yeah.
pain of cold, then it's nothing.
And so I have to ask, do you just like walk in? Do you like just jump in, or and like how long do you stay in there when you kind of do these cold plunges?
So I just walk in, or I mean, I do jump in sometimes, but sometimes I'll just sit there, wait till like my body's completely non-reactive, and then I'll just like go for a swim to another dock and back. And
Yeah.
so could be 5 minutes depending on what I have to do. Could be 10 minutes. I know if I swim to the dock and back, it's around 15 to 17 minutes, depending on how hard I go. But
Okay.
it's kind of funny sometimes. There's the people that bring in the docks for the winter, and I like
Yeah.
swam over to the one dock, and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Who's this
Like,
psychopath?
just going for a swim, man. They're like, okay. So
That's
yeah, I
awesome.
mean, it's kind of weird too when you're swimming in cold water like that, because on the way back, I kind of you feel your body kind of panic a bit. It's like, this is really fucking cold, dude. Like, you could die right here. And
Yeah.
you're like, just be okay with it. Just like keep shut off the brain, just like one arm after the other.
And it gives you too, like, I think it does two things. It's like, so there's definitely like some, hardcore physiological benefits right away where it just, revs up catecholamines and stuff like that and makes you feel good. But there's also too, like when you do something like that, after you're done, there's this mental aspect of like, I fucking did that. You know what I mean? And then that kind of gives you momentum to sort of, take on something else or to like keep going, But
Mm-hmm.
also too, like, I know we only have about 20 minutes or so left, maybe a little bit less, but you mentioned fasting and we didn't really, get into that too much. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what benefits did you see from fasting, and like how much are you fasting now?
I mean, I fast every day.
Like for 8 hours, 16, or like 16 hours, like 18 hours, like what's your?
I adjust it. So right now I've adjusted it back to um I'll eat at like, let's say, 4 o'clock. And
Okay.
then previously I would just go from, I wouldn't eat till at least 7, and I eat from 7 to like 9 or
Okay.
10 latest. And then I'd eat that. And that would be my schedule. But some days, especially if I'm traveling, I'll just eat that once a day. It's just like, I'll just have a one big meal, and that'll be it.
And what do you usually eat in that one giant meal?
Oh, well, right now, with who I'm with, I'm just eating basically steak.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Steak, and I have a bowl of cereal.
So it's more or less carnivore with one bowl of cereal, something like that.
It's like a keto cereal. It's that magic cereal or whatever it's called. I don't know,
Oh yeah, Magic
but
Spoon. I had that
magic
before.
spoon.
Actually,
Yeah.
I gotta order some more of that. I forgot. That's amazing. The
So
Fruit
my
Loops
go
are insane.
Oh, Fruit Loops, the best one. So I do the Fruit Loops, and then I buy like that keto chocolate from Costco, and I put that on top, and then
Oh,
I dummy that.
yeah, someone actually, I was at a wedding recently and they gave us like a little gift, and it was those keto snacks you get at Costco. Those are
Yeah.
wicked. I love those.
I'm not
Those
like keto or anything. It's just like I still eat vegetables if they're there, and all that. It's just like I just try to keep that stuff down. It's like that the keto cereal is just like a lot less sugar, like virtually. I think it's no sugar.
I think, yeah,
So
I'm pretty sure it's like 2 net carbs or something crazy like that. But yeah, I know a
yeah.
lot of people who've gotten into the Magic Spoon cereal. And what do you find, like what benefits do you find that you've gotten from fasting?
Well, mental clarity is one, right?
Yeah.
Um, I have more energy. Like I find for me, as soon as I eat, like my energy goes downhill. Like I probably go for a nap right after, you know.
Yeah.
so so I fasting, like I can go all day. I can do hard labor. Doesn't matter for me. Like I can just
And did you find
go.
initially there was an adjustment period, or was it like right away you found that, better mental clarity, better kind of like work capacity, or was there?
Yeah, my originally when I started fasting years ago was definitely tough because like I'd wake up in the morning, I'd eat like a massive meal, and then probably go work out, right?
Yeah.
And just that memory the gut has of being full in the morning. Like originally that took a lot. Now it's nothing. Like I wake up, I just have some water and I go about doing my day. Like I don't even think about eating, not till later.
Yeah.
So sometimes it might take years for some people to get that sort of that gut memory going. Because I mean, we've been taught since we were kids that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's like
Bullshit.
actually it's not, because your human growth hormone will still increase a little bit and then slowly taper off and go down. But as soon as you ingest food, your hormone production growth just plummets, right? So because it now has to take all of the blood and adjust everything to where it's rushing to the gut to help digest the food, right?
Yeah,
So
I've seen studies that have said that intermittent fasting can help boost human growth hormone, and also too on that note, in terms of going to sleep at night. I mean, that's when the bulk of your growth hormone is going to get released. If you're not sleeping well, then your growth hormone really gets smashed. And also, alcohol, because I know that there's a lot of veterans, unfortunately, who do struggle with alcohol use, and alcohol really hinders your growth hormone production at night. So if you
yeah,
want to maximize your growth hormone, definitely eliminate the alcohol as much as possible, get as much sleep as possible, and then practice some intermittent fasting. Lifting heavy things, sprinting, things like that can also lead to improvements in growth hormone as well. So
and autophagy only kicks in, I believe, after 72 hours. So if you fast past 72 hours, autophagy then kicks in, which is like cell regeneration, stuff like that, right? Which
yeah.
is really good for the body.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
is why it's technically like an anti-aging thing, which is what people
Yeah, a
claim it
lot
to
of
be.
people are using it. Like when I had Dave Asprey on here a while ago now, he kind of, I mean, he's into everything that, you and I are into, like NAD and stuff like that. And he was saying that, he still thinks that, fasting is basically the best tool for anti-aging. But,
Hmm.
I do definitely have a few more questions for you. But what am I missing in terms of, like non-medication wise? I guess we didn't talk about exercise too much. Like, do you find that exercise is something that sometimes some vets kind of miss out on, or sort of like a low-hanging fruit tool that they should be using a little bit more to help treat symptoms? Or
Yeah, I was doing a ton of exercising when I came back, like a lot. Like my life basically evolved around working out, but it became actually negative to a certain point too, because it was like
yeah.
all about working out. So I think there's a balance. Like I don't think you need to be like I never did a show or anything like a bodybuilding show, but I was a big dude back then, and I remember like a couple guys saying like, "Oh, you just worried about not winning or not wanting to cut down or whatever." I'm like, "No, I'll fucking cut down. You have a show, I'll cut down the same time you cut down. We'll see who gets a lower body fat percentage. I just won't compete, right?"
Yeah.
And so I cut down to like 4.9% without cutting my water, and it's like I don't know. I just don't like the mental aspect of it, because you see a lot of those people. I would say a lot of body like everything has to do with body image. So it's got to be a mental fuck, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard too, because like you do want to make progression with it, but then at a
Yeah.
certain point you have to say like, okay, like enough is kind of like enough at this point. Like you eventually you are going to max out. Like you're not going to get bigger, stronger, faster every single workout. Like your gains in the first year are going to be insane if you've never
Hmm.
worked out before. In the second year they'll still be pretty insane, and then years 3 to 5 there's minimal gains, and then after that like it's mostly just maintenance. Like you can't just improve like every single workout every single time.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where people fall into the category of it becoming like detrimental, because like at first you get all this progress and you're so excited, and then all of a sudden like the progress does halt fairly quickly
Hmm.
at some point,
Hmm.
and
And
then
your age too, right? So,
yeah. Yeah.
but I would say one of the biggest things too, aside from for non-medication, what helps is breathing practices.
Okay.
So breathing is a huge one. So I tried out Wim Hof's breathing thing, and that was really good. And then because I watched the Vice episode on that, and then I went and did Yogi Labs breathwork course, and then I also became a breath coach myself after like diving into all this stuff. And it's been like, I think breathing and meditation, like both those things, they're really hippie, or at least were. And
Yeah.
like
Not
I would have
anymore,
never. What's that?
they're not anymore though, and like they were talking about that on the Rogan podcast too. I mean, it is definitely still a little bit like not everyone's open to it, and I think like they were saying on that podcast, like, you know, when did you first hear the word mindfulness? And I think for me it was around like 2008. I think the girl I was going out with at the time had a sister who was getting into, or like studying or something. And I remember like hearing about it, but I never ever practiced it until maybe 2013 or 2014. And when I got into heart rate variability, and that
Mm,
sort of like led me into meditation a little bit, I guess, because the heart rate variability had, like, to me at that time, I guess I was a little bit resistant, you know, still to the idea of meditation and mindfulness, whereas that sort of seemed to be a little bit more scientific, I guess. But then
mhm.
now we have, you know, so much science on meditation and mindfulness. It's crazy.
Well, yeah. I mean, the only thing that got me into the meditation, and I'll be honest, the only thing that got me into all this stuff was, psychedelic experience. You know,
Yeah. So
and
yeah,
so
I
like
want to talk about DMT before I let you go.
I,
Not to kind of make a major sideway there, but yeah, just tell us a little bit about like how did you first discover DMT, and what has it done for you in your life?
well, I mean, I had done like mushrooms once or twice before that, and then a good buddy, came up to me and asked me like, "Hey, I'm going on this experience, this like DMT trip. Maybe you want to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Like I had nothing to do. I'm like, "Maybe I'll see a couple things like on mushrooms or whatever, and that'll be it." And then I fucking go there, and it just rocked my world. Just like whew, completely different, not at all what I expected, and in the best possible way, you know. And it just really makes you realize like how much bullshit there is that we put on ourselves around here. Like we're literally on this floating rock hurling through space, and it's like, why the fuck do I care about the new pair of sunglasses I want to get? Like, why do I care about all this stuff? It's like, it's not to not care. It's like take things a little bit less serious, and just realize like, there's something else. There's things that we just aren't meant to understand and aren't meant to know, and you know just be good with it.
Just be accepting of that. And did you, you know, a lot of people when they hear DMT, they think of, you know, the classic like ego dissolution. Like, did you feel that like when you took it, that like, holy shit, I can literally feel like my ego like dissolving right now? Or like how did you how did your experience go in that way?
I died. Basically, I died. So I never felt like I could ever let anything go. Like I always had to be strong for my family and stuff like that, especially the time that I was going through at the time. Like my mom had just passed away and everything like that. And like I felt like I needed to be there for everyone, and kind of be, the go-to. And the only time I ever felt my entire life that I could ever like relax and just like let things go, and is if I had died, but I didn't know what dying felt like. And so after that experience, I would like during that experience, like I just let go of everything, and I was like, like I had died, and I just didn't care, just let it all go, and it was the most freeing thing possible. I was just like, holy fuck, like I had never felt this in my entire life, and this is the most amazing feeling ever, And I just let everything go, everything that I had ever built up in my life, or just yeah, it was amazing. So
And the whole thing is only about 5 or 10 minutes when you're taking the DMT. Like, was that how long your experience was, or how did it go?
yeah, it's about 20 minutes, and I had no sense of time or direction. So I was basically just, out there.
Yeah. And then after the 20 minutes, like when you sort of like came to, so to speak, how did you feel then?
I hadn't cried in forever, probably years. Not even when my mom passed away at the funeral did I cry. And then just like everything I'd ever, held in my entire life just came out. And I was bawling like a little schoolgirl. I was like, I look back, I was like, you little bitch. But no. No, honestly, it was good. It was good.
The fact that you can laugh about it means that like healing was like done. You know what I mean? Because like
yeah.
you're laughing. I always say that too. Like laughing at your former self means that like you knew you were ridiculous, but you're accepting of it, and now you're okay with who you are.
Mhm.
Who you are. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. And so because of that experience, it put me down like this whirlwind to just like help veterans, help first responders and stuff. And so lately I've been working with Yogi Labs, Brian down in Yogi Labs. He's one of the founders of it. And he came up with a breathwork course, and I've connected him with certain people so we can give veterans and military members a breathwork that they can do. And we're sending it to all of these psychedelic companies that are putting people through psychedelic experiences. So the Heroic Hearts Project is one where they send people to do ayahuasca around the world. And so
And
they're
so
going to
people
get this
know the
free.
active ingredient and I don't mean to interrupt you there, Dave, but just so people know, the active ingredient in ayahuasca is DMT. So people get not the same experience, but maybe it's very different because the length of ayahuasca is different, but they do get some of the same benefits. Maybe I should say. But sorry, go ahead there, Dave.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so Heroic Hearts Project is sending guys around the world that really need it to have psychedelics experience. So it's a great nonprofit organization. We also have another organization that we're working with where they do iboga. So they're doing iboga. Yeah, it's complete. I haven't tried that one yet. I plan on it, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that one's
I heard that one's rough.
it's like 72 hours or something, right? Like it's a long time, and
I heard it's rough.
Yeah, and that one too is like, I mean, I'm kind of trying to figure this out now because there's not that much research on it, I suppose, like, which psychedelic would be better for which like specific symptoms, so to speak. But it seems like with iboga, it's very, very good for addiction, in particular, like
opioids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
seems
like
effective for that.
I had a buddy that was stuck on Suboxone after getting off opioids, and he could not kick the Suboxone. And so basically, if you're doing opioids or on Suboxone, to get you off of Suboxone, they'll put you back on short acting opioids, and then put you through iboga. Because basically, you can take a heroin addict and cure them in a week with iboga. You have someone stuck on Suboxone and methadone, it takes like 2 months. So it's kind of crazy how we're trying to deal with this opioid crisis when we can just like really help people with like a natural thing. It's really hard on the body, but that's what people need. I think people need like a spiritual kind of awakening. It's kind of very hippie, but like they just need to feel something other than this shit reality that they've been living in. And that seems to be one of the only ways to get them to actually feel something emotional, because they've just been numbing their emotions this entire time. And doing these modalities, it just like it gives them the emotion. It shows them like, hey, this is what life can be like. This is what you've gone through in life. It really can bring up some traumatic events for some people, but that they need to see that because they're taking these drugs to avoid feeling and seeing those things. But that's what we talked about the weed at the beginning. We're just avoiding it, but we're never actually working on it. So after we get to a certain point of avoidance, if we keep on doing what we're doing, it becomes an addiction. So why don't we get to that point of avoidance where now we know we can probably deal with it. Let's stop doing the avoidance and let's work on it. Let's use these tools that we have that are readily available. Like iboga is legal in Canada, DMT is legal. Like it's not an illegal substance. Like we can do all these things. There's many clinics out there, and for me, like the DMT is a great one. So.
Yeah. Well, brother, man, it's been an amazing hour. Unfortunately, our time here is up, and I think that's actually, a pretty good way to end it. Make sure that if you're in, a really bad state, we understand that, you can't, apply all these modalities like we talked about, fasting and meditation, like it's just too difficult. But, once you do use a medicine that is effective, that brings you out of that state, definitely look at, non-medication ways to kind of, help yourself out and help treat your symptoms. So Dave, where can people find you if you want people to find you on your and anything else that you wanted to leave before we go?
I don't want people to find me, but if they want to help out the cause, they can go to Heroic Hearts Project, donate to them. They're a nonprofit. Donate to Yogi Labs out in Bali. They do free meditation programs and breathing practices. So, I mean, by all means, please do that. Also, maybe Soldier On, if you want to donate to that, that'd be great. So thank you very much, man. I appreciate your time.
No, man, I really appreciate you coming on, and of course, thank you for your service as a veteran. I sincerely appreciate that, and thank you for coming on this podcast and sharing everything. You've had an incredible journey. I think a lot of people will benefit from hearing this. So, thanks so much for coming on. I'm sure I'm going to get a request to have you back on, and we'll do round 2 maybe sometime soon.
All right, sounds good, brother.
Okay, see you, brother. Peace.